Like many of you, we are big fans of the musical Hamilton. It's an amazing show with incredible music and a fantastic cast.
One of the sequences that made us curious was the room where it happens. As food people, we wanted to know, what did they eat in the room where it happened? And can we recreate it?
So that's what we set out to do, and it turned out to be a wonderful meal and a remarkable learning experience as we learned more about the man behind the menu. One of the reasons this dinner is so significant is that Hamilton and Jefferson were political enemies whose feud became so severe that George Washington had to warn them that their squabbling could destroy the country. They even went so far as to create media publications to attack each other in the press.
We smack each other in the press and we don't print retractions.
As America was facing a national debt crisis and an intense debate as to the location of the permanent capital, the two men, along with James Madison, realized there may be a path forward on Hamilton's debt plan if concessions were made to establish a permanent capital along the Potomac.
This leads to the Dinner Table Compromise of 1790, which forever altered the course of America's future. While this grand bargain was taking shape in the kitchen, one of the world's best chefs was revolutionizing cuisine.
James Hemings was an enslaved man who traveled with Jefferson to France and studied French cookery. He combined French dishes and techniques with Virginian cooking traditions to establish a type of fusion cuisine never seen before.
While Jefferson is known to have introduced many new dishes into American food culture, many of those dishes are a product of Hemings' brilliance and creativity.
Alexander Hamilton never wrote about food, but this meal he raved about, particularly the Beefala Mode and ice cream profiteroles.
One of our most surprising discoveries when recreating this meal is how incredibly high concept these dishes are. They're sophisticated, and they achieve a balance of flavors that's stunning, considering that they're 230 years old and prepared without basic kitchen conveniences like electricity, running water, timers, or temperature controls.
This meal had 5 courses: wine jelly, a green salad, capon stuffed with Virginia ham, chestnut puree, artichokes, truffles, white wine, and cream, Beefala Mode with a French-style bouillon, as well as a dessert buffet highlighted by vanilla ice cream profiteroles.
Each course was accompanied by a wine pairing, even the wine jelly. We did our best to pair wines, however, Jefferson had access to many vintages that are nearly impossible to find in the US. For this meal, we're using a white and red Bordeaux, a Montepulciano, a Chambertin, and an Old World style sparkling white.
In this video, we're recreating that famous meal made by James Hemings so that we can taste history and imagine what it was like to eat in the room where it happened.
If you're interested in learning about this meal or the life of James Hemings, you can find links in the description below.
So we're starting with the wine jelly. To do that, you want a cup of Madeira. We're gonna get our oven going. Once it gets to a boil, we're gonna add our sugar, let it reduce, add some lemon juice, and then add our gelatin. So our wine is now boiling, so we're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then quickly whisk that in to dissolve the sugar. And now we're gonna let this come back up to a boil and reduce it, so that way it'll intensify the flavor of the wine. All right, I think it's reduced as much as I want it to at this point, so I'm gonna start to add my lemon juice. And we're using about a tablespoon of lemon juice here. Give that a nice whisk as well. Oh yeah. Oh, we've got something. All right, I'm gonna kill the heat and add my gelatin, which I've been blooming. It's about 2 teaspoons of gelatin. You can also use sheets if you have it. We do not. It's a gelatin popsicle. Okay, so our gelatin is nice and mixed in. Now I'm just gonna use a sieve to pour it into my mold. All right, and once you've got it in the mold, you wanna put the mold in the refrigerator to let it set for at least 1 hour before serving.
So Beefala Mode, right? This is kind of like a French pot roast, and it's kind of the signature dish of Jefferson and James Hemings. It's made with top round, which is very, very lean. So what they do is they lard it with bacon. And larding basically means they have these big needles that they stick into the meat, and they just push the bacon in. What I'm gonna do is just use a knife and cut into the top round. And then I'm going to kind of stuff the bacon in there. I'm thinking I could probably only get 3 spots in here. I think the original Hemings recipe called for 4, but it's based on the size of your top round. We're going to shove some bacon into those holes. To do that, first I'm going to roll these strips of bacon in a little bit of a mix of onion, a little bit of parsley, some salt, some pepper, and some thyme. But we're going to use herbes de Provence instead, because I think that's probably a little bit more of a French twist that would have been added to this dish. And I'm going to add my salt and pepper now.
Do you need someone who doesn't have meat pans to give you salt?
I do, yes. Perfect. So now we kind of have these like herby onions here, and I'm just going to kind of let the bacon kind of toss around in those like herby onions. Now we need to go ahead and stuff these holes full of this bacony goodness. So you want to try to get in there as best you can. Make those holes nice and large. It looks a little freaky, not going to lie. But again, we're doing this without the benefit of the larding needle that they would have normally used for this. So there's a couple other things that you can do in terms of larding. So this has been a little bit challenging doing it this way. So I think what I'm probably going to do is make some incisions and just put some bacon in that way too. Alright, so believe it or not, I was able to get 3 strips of bacon into this roast. But actually, we're not even done with the bacon yet for this thing. There's more to come, too. This is now going to go into our roasting pan, where we're going to put this in with our potatoes and carrots, and we're going to just roast this on a relatively low oven temperature. I'm thinking around 300. I don't want this to overcook. I'm going to try to cook it to about 135, so I'm not going to give you guys a set amount of time to watch this for. You want to go by temperature on this guy so you don't overcook it. Before we put this in the pan, what we want to do is lay a little bacon bed down for this guy right here. And this bacon is actually going to also be a base for the sauce that's going to come a little bit later too. I'm also going to take some of these onions that we still have left from our onion mixture. We're going to drop those down as well. Now I'm going to hit this with a little bit of nutmeg. Alright, so we have our roast. This has been larded and it's ready to go. So we're going to set the roast down on that little bacon bed. Then we're going to just hit it with some more of our herb mix. We have our herbes de Provence again. We're going to be using those. We're just going to get those right on there. I'm also going to hit the top with a little bit of nutmeg. More bacon. What? That's right. We're going to actually put a couple slices of bacon on top. Here we have some carrots and some potatoes. We get some really nice colors here. So they're going to go in as well. Just going to kind of scatter those around our pan here on both sides. Potatoes. We're using these little small guys right here, so you can actually put them in whole instead, or you can cut them in half, either way. We're going to go ahead and put them in whole. Also going to hit those with some herbs too. And now we're going to add a cup of white wine. We're also going to add half a cup of brandy. And then we're going to add some chicken stock as well. We're going to add about half a cup of chicken stock. Before we put this in the oven, I did want to add some onions to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop some of these. And so that's going to go in our Dutch oven, 300 degrees, covered until it hits an internal temperature of 135 degrees.
So to make the vinaigrette, we're going to start with a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, and then we're going to do a 2-to-1 ratio of olive oil to vinegar. Pinch of salt. We put some pepper in the salad, but we're also going to put some in the dressing. And then we're going to use our herbes de Provence. You're going to see these pop up a lot in this meal tonight. We're going to go ahead and put some of those in the dressing as well. Give it a stir. And the Dijon mustard acts as an emulsifier to really bring all those ingredients together. You know what? I forgot one thing, one very important thing. We want the zest of some lemon. We're also going to hit this up with some lemon juice and really season to taste. Alright, so that is your basic vinaigrette recipe. You can expand on that. Put a couple of charred shallots in there. Oh my god, that would be perfection. But we're going to keep it nice and simple for this dish. Don't forget, this is also being served with an extravagant wine jelly made from Madeira.
So the recipe for the stuffed capon, we're actually going to use chicken because we don't really have access to a capon. One of the first things that we really need to do is work on what would be the chestnut puree. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get chestnuts because they're kind of seasonal around here. So we're going to be using cashews instead. So we've been boiling cashews for about 10 minutes. And so now we're going to take them off of the heat and put them into our food processor and give them a little blitz with some water and salt. Cashews have been drained. They're ready to go right into our little mini food processor here. We're going to hit them with a little bit of salt. For our cashew puree, we like to use half a cup of cashews and then a quarter of a cup of water. And then from there, we kind of adjust the thickness as we go. But that should give you a pretty good consistency. You want to blitz this for a good long time, like at least 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. So give your blender some work. You may need to open this up and just kind of brush down the sides a little bit, but it's easier than using like a mortar and pestle like James Hemings would have likely had to do. Just one more quick blitz just to get everything incorporated and get it nice and pureed. So there is our puree. Looks pretty good here. We're going to put this to the side until we're ready to use it with our chicken. All right, so let's get to work on our stuffed chicken. Here you see that I have the chicken breast. It's already been butterflied for me. So what I want to do is just kind of pound it out to get it a little bit thinner. I'm going to do that by placing some plastic wrap down here right on the chicken. And just ever so lightly, we're going to kind of roll it out and give it a little bit of a pounding as we do. You don't want to, go whacking at it super hard. You want to be a little bit firm. You want it to be as flat as possible. The other thing too is when you do this, do kind of like glancing blows that don't mash it. Don't whack down on it like you're, hammering a nail. All right, so now we have something that's a little bit thinner and easier to work with. Now we're ready to start to kind of assemble this guy. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is season the inside of this with a little bit of salt. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to put down our cashew cream. Chestnut in the original recipe, but cashews for what we're doing today. And I'm just going to spread this all throughout the inside of this chicken breast. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay down our ham. So you want to get some nice Virginia ham, and you just want to put that down. And kind of pack it down a little bit too. We have some artichoke hearts that we've been braising in a little bit of cream and white wine. And there's also some truffle in there as well. The recipe said that it was stuffed with white wine, cream, truffle, and artichokes. This was kind of how we decided to put that together. Just braising the artichokes in that wine. So now these will go in next.
And Nick, just in case our audience doesn't know, what is a capon?
A capon is a rooster that basically has its roostering days are long behind him. I'm just going to pour a little bit of that white wine mixture on there too. And now we're going to roll it, and this is going to be really difficult to do, but I'm going to do my best. And I think I'm going to roll this way, and let's see how that goes. Not too bad. We have it rolled up. Got a little bit of truffle cream leaking out of the side. Nothing wrong with that. But now what we want to do is get some butcher's twine and seal this thing up so that way we can cook it. So I'm just going to do kind of a regular old knot here. Now what we want to do is roast this in a 425 degree oven until that chicken is done, which is about 165 degrees usually for breast meat. So we're going to go ahead and just put that in the oven, cover it with a little bit of olive oil as well. So the chicken is cooking. Now we're going to do the sauce for the chicken. This one we had to just look for a recipe for because there's not one that's really written down. What it basically says is this. You put some shallots. We have some onions here that we're going to put in. 2 cups of apple cider. And then we're going to go with half a cup of brandy. Oh yeah, man. We are not messing around. We're going to bring this to a boil. Then we're going to strain the onions and then thicken it with some cream.
It does not look pleasant.
It does not. So our sauce has reduced down a little bit. So now what we want to do is strain off these onions. So we're just going to strain that off into a bowl. And then you're going to take your sauce and you're going to pour it back in. Because now what we're going to do is mix this with a half a cup of heavy cream into our sauce, and we're just going to let this simmer. Still not sure what to think of this sauce. It's bizarre, but I'm ready. I'm ready to try it. I'm excited. I'm gonna let this kind of simmer just a little bit more, then we're gonna pull it off and move on to our next step.
So the last thing we're going to work on is the dessert course, which is a pot of choux filled with ice cream. To start, we're going to heat some water and some butter. And we're making a reduced recipe, so we're using half a cup of water and 4 tablespoons of butter and about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we're gonna allow the butter to melt in with the water, combine or emulsify, and then we're gonna bring that to a boil for about a minute or so, kill the heat, add our flour, and then stir like crazy. All right, so it's been boiling for about a minute. I've killed my heat, and now I'm gonna add my flour and stir vigorously. Okay, so that came together pretty quickly. Now what we're going to do is turn the heat back on just for a little bit and get rid of some of this excess moisture that's in the dough. And we're just gonna spoon it around the pot. All right, I think we're good now to remove it from the heat completely. All right, we're gonna leave it in this bowl for a little bit just while we get our food processor set up for the next steps. Our next step is to transfer our choux into a food processor. You can also use a blender, not blender.
A stand mixer.
You can use a stand mixer, or you can do this by hand, but it's tedious. So we're gonna transfer it into our food processor with some egg. Oh, don't be too aggressive with the egg. All right, so we're gonna cover this, and then we're gonna pulse it. All right, so we want a total of 2 eggs. So we're gonna add in our next egg a little bit at a time. I've whisked it. So we're gonna add about half. I'm gonna test the consistency of it. I learned this from a different YouTuber. I'm gonna stick my hand in there and then like get a little bit and peeks. Ah, it fell over. So that is a symbol that it is good to go. So now we're going to transfer this into a piping bag and then pipe it. So we've got our pot of choux in our piping bag. I guess it's just choux at this point. There's no pas de. There is pas de pas de. It's been a long day.
High school French joke.
So now, you see how they have these little spiky thingies? We're gonna go ahead and with a fork and some water, just do a crisscross to flatten that out. All right.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Into the oven they go.
Out of all the dishes we've made today, including the wine jelly, this is the one that I'm least confident with. I'm excited either way.
Our pastries are out of the oven. They're looking beautiful. These were baked at 425 for 15 minutes, then 375 for 18 minutes, then 300 for 15 minutes, and now they are done. We are now ready to cut these in half, drop some ice cream on them, and finish this dessert. So here we go. There you see they've got the nice cavities in them there that we're now going to fill with some ice cream.
Oh my goodness.
So here we go. The wine jelly is delicious. It's like a really sophisticated Jell-O shot.
The chicken was incredible.
Yeah, and we weren't sure about the Calvados sauce, but it added this kind of sweet oakiness that really enhanced all the other flavors in the dish. It was really terrific.
The Beefala Mode was tender, and it got a lot of help from larding it with the applewood smoked bacon.
The white wine and the brandy that we included in the bouillon also really helped to perfume those root vegetables that we put in there. And then as the beef was resting, we cooked that down with some more chicken stock to really make that flavor in that bouillon even more bold and pronounced. It was a great accompaniment for the dish.
And the chambertin that was paired with it was amazing. It is the best wine I've ever had. The profiteroles were delightful.
It's like a very fancy, very elegant ice cream sandwich. And then when you have that with champagne, you can't help but just feel giddy and overcome with joy. It's almost symphonic how all these disparate ingredients come together and have flavors that play off of each other throughout the entire meal.
This meal was an experience.
What I wasn't expecting and could not predict is that each dish would bring such joy and wonder.
I was excited for every course, wondering what the next dish would bring.
It embodies joie de vivre, the kind of happiness that Jefferson was referring to when he appointed it next to the words life and liberty.
As soon as we tasted the wine jelly, we knew we were headed for something special, and that momentum continued through each course.
We've never worked this hard on a meal, and perhaps never been so rewarded by its result. It was a large undertaking, and we stand in awe of its original creators, who had to do it all without modern kitchen conveniences. From the creation of this sophisticated menu to its execution, it's undeniable that this epic dinner was produced by extraordinary people.
It was a revolutionary meal for a revolutionary time that inspired a revolutionary musical.
Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see us create more meals like this, be sure to like and subscribe.